Hello, and welcome to Biospaces the Weekly. I'm your host, Jeff Axt, and while it was a bit of a slow week with the 4th of July weekend, we do have one of the biggest biopharma acquisitions this year to discuss with you. That's Vertex's $10 billion purchase of endocrinology specialist Crinetics Pharmaceuticals. We'll also talk about some market trends from the first half of the year. On the IPO side, hair loss biotech Vertex is certainly a standout. They are up more than 650% since it debuted on the market in February. And when it comes to VC funding, we have Isomorphic Labs' $2.1 billion Series B raise from May. That now ranks as the second largest biotech raise of all time. So certainly some interesting market trends to discuss. We'll also check in on the FDA. We know it's been a tumultuous year for the agency, but how do decisions so far this year compare to previous years? Let's dig in. Hi, guys. How y'all doing? How was your 4th of July?
Hello. My 4th of July was great. We celebrated in Canada.
I did as well. I took my parents out for ice cream and I wore a white t-shirt with blue stars.
Aw.
Very patriotic for the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I lived there for 10 years, so I figure, it's my adopted country.
I love it.
We went down to the St. Lawrence River and waved at America, which was nice.
I did go up north, and honestly, you guys probably celebrated more than I did. I didn't really do anything special, so.
So far north that you went to Canada, or you stayed in Wisconsin?
Not north enough, only Wisconsin.
I do love that our 2 resident Canadians on the editorial team have spent plenty of time in the U.S.
Yes, and technically I am Canadian American. I am dual citizen, so I get both.
You get double the holidays.
Yeah, I get 2 Thanksgivings. I get 2, country celebrations in July. It's great.
So it's good to do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys had Canada Day just a few days before our 4th, right? Didn't you do something for that day as well?
Yep.
Yeah. And I went to a non-barbecue barbecue. So my uncle used to be a chef, and he doesn't do burgers or hot dogs, right? He does gourmet meats, and we had some sausage, and then we had some pork, and then we had chicken option, and then we had these salads with 18 ingredients each. And yeah,
love that. I want to go to that barbecue.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing next year.
Yeah,
gonna crash
2
Heather's.
kinds of pie. It was just, it was nice. So it was the hottest day of, I think, the year so far. So
It was hot. It was blazing down here in Virginia. We cooked out all weekend. We did do traditional hot dogs and hamburgers on Friday, but we did get creative on Saturday. We smoked ribs, and then we also threw a big salmon fillet for the pescatarians in the family on the Traeger. So that turned out really good. So I'm no chef. I can't compete with your uncle, but we had some decent food this weekend as well.
I'm just over here eating 10 gallons of potato salad that's left over from our little July 4th barbecue. It's just going to be never ending.
I can do that all week. Just eat potato salad.
All right. Well, with our tummies full of potato salad, let's get to introductions. Heather, why don't you start us off this week?
All right. I am Heather McKenzie, senior editor at Biospace, and I curate Clinicaspace, which hits your inboxes every Monday.
And Gabby, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Gabrielle Mason. I'm the senior editor, and I put together our manufacturing brief, which hits your inboxes every Tuesday, and then our daily gene pool newsletter.
And I am Annalie Armstrong. I do the BioPharm Executive Newsletter, which goes out every Wednesday morning.
And as a reminder, I'm Jeff Axt. I'm managing editor. And with that, let's dive in. So first up on our agenda today is, of course, that big Vertex buy. So as I mentioned in the introduction, Vertex dropped $10 billion this week to pick up Crinetics Pharmaceuticals. It is the largest pickup in Vertex's history, and it is in line with the second and third biggest deals of the first half. So we have AbbVie buying Apogee for $10.7 billion. We've got GSK picking up Nuvalent for $10.6 billion. So right up there in line with those 2. The only one that tops these 3 is the Sun Pharma deal. They bought a women's health company, Organon, for $12.6 billion, but that's not really in the traditional biopharma space. So really, this Vertex deal is among the biggest of the traditional biopharma deals this year.
Yeah, and so with picking up Crinetics, which is an endocrine specialist, they're based in California. With that, Vertex gains an already approved drug. So that's Crinetics' drug called Palsonify, which they got the FDA green light in September of last year. And it's a pill for acromegaly, which is a rare pituitary condition. And then another asset picked up from the buyout is a late stage candidate for congenital adrenal hyperplasia. These kind of specialty endocrinology markets represent emerging white space blockbuster opportunities, according to Stifel analysts. And then Vertex said that they believe the two assets together can potentially deliver over $5 billion in combined annual revenue at their peak. So a really interesting deal.
Yeah, it's really great to see Vertex doing some acquisitions. They've been really kind of laser focused on some of their, existing markets like cystic fibrosis and that kind of thing. So really cool to see them be one of the big players this year. They've always been kind of rumored to be a buyer, and yet this is the first time they've really struck something very large. But this really fits in with the trends that we're seeing across pharma. As Jeff was mentioning, that $10 billion seems to be the sweet spot for a lot of companies right now. So on the smaller side, we also had a deal from Novartis this week. It's actually their third of the year. They are now buying ADC specialist Mirix for $1.5 billion. They've been on quite a spree in oncology recently, so definitely fits in with what they've been up to. So again, third deal for Novartis that matches Gilead and GSK, which have also signed 3 apiece, which sounds like a lot. However, Lilly has actually signed 9 deals as of the end of the half, which totaled $25 billion. So 3 deals from 3 different companies really pales in comparison to what Lilly is up to. So M&A is definitely picking up across pharma. Really great to see this kind of string of major deals. You can check out my analysis at Biospace.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a continuing trend, this uptick in M&A. Everybody's really excited about it. We keep seeing more and more of these deals coming through. It's like a real kind of point of optimism in the space. But, one of the biggest of the year certainly keeps that trend going into the second half with gusto. So that is good to see. Like I said, we're also going to talk about some other trends here. IPO is another one that window seems to be opening more and more. We talked recently about the double header of record-setting IPOs that we've had. But today, let's dive in a little bit more to Vertex. I mentioned this as like the highest performing IPO this year, up more than 650% since it debuted in February. Gabby, you took a deep dive into what's going on there.
Yeah, so like you said, we've had our eyes on Vertex since they, debuted in February. And they had an opening day surge from an expected $17 per share to about $37. And then as of July 1st, the biotech shares were trading around $128 per share. So that's just behind the 650 increase. So pretty incredible. I got to speak with their CEO, Reed Waldman, and he basically said, obesity paved the way for hair loss. He said the GLP-1 market kind of explosion a few years ago serves essentially as the playbook for a consumer-directed market, which, he believes is the future of pharmaceuticals.
I love this. Biospace did a feature, must have been almost a year ago, where like hair loss, is it the next weight loss? And here you go. He seems to agree with that.
And he thinks that the second half of this year will be just as good, if not better, for Crinetics. So the company, they're working on a late-stage extended release oral version of a Rogaine. And so they haven't submitted, like a data package to the FDA yet, but their hope is that, eventually they can win the first oral approval in male pattern hair loss in 30 years. And they're also looking for the first ever oral nod for female pattern hair loss. So a very cool company worth keeping an eye on. And then while we're talking about IPOs, normally summer is a little slower, but 2 biotechs have actually filed to go public over the last few days. So one of those is Scribe Therapeutics, which is especially notable because the biotech's pipeline is very early stage. Only one candidate has just entered the clinic. They're developing CRISPR-based medicines, and they were co-founded by Jennifer Doudna. So they didn't share a ton of details, like when they plan to IPO or how much they hope to raise, but now we know that they're pushing to go public. And then another U.S. biotech called Calohexis, which was a spin out of Endevica Bio earlier this year. They also said they were hoping to make, the public plunge. So we'll be tracking those potential IPOs. And then I'm also, working on a piece that analyzes the IPOs that we saw in the first half of this year, because it was a pretty groundbreaking time. There are a few different records set, especially compared to the market last year. So keep your eyes out for that.
Yeah, we're going to get to it a little bit later in the show when we talk about biopharm executive, but that seems like a similar story to the VC side of things, where it's really this have not story still, where we're getting more and more raises, more and more IPOs, things seem to be moving, but it's really for a select few. And so it's really interesting to hear you talk about Scribe as really an early stage IPO. Like that would be really great to see some of that momentum trickle down into those earlier stage companies, because those are the ones who are still really struggling and the ones that we need to maintain, the innovation pipeline. So, like I said, we'll get back to the VC raises. Right now, we are going to pivot to FDA. We always like to talk about the FDA and the chaos and the turmoil there, but this time, we were just going to take a look back at the first half numbers. Given all of the leadership turnover, all of the staffing cuts last year, all of the controversy and drama surrounding Prasad and McCary, we want to see how are the decisions actually coming through. So you took a deep dive into the numbers, Heather, along with our staff writer, Tristan Manilak. What did you find?
So Tristan, especially, is really conscientious about updating our FDA tracker, and that includes both novel approvals and supplemental approvals. So we came up with 79 total decisions this year, down just a little bit from last year, where there were 85 in the first half. Novel approvals, though, actually ticked up. So there were 19 in the first half of last year, and we're counting 26 so far. So that's really good news, especially considering all the drama that we've had. Most of these were from Cedar. However, according to Jeffries, CBER, that's the biologics division of the FDA, only granted 2 approvals in H1. Those were Rocket Pharmaceuticals' Kresladi, and that is for the rare immune disease leukocyte adhesion deficiency 1, and then Regeneron Pharmaceuticals' Otarmony, which is for a genetic form of hearing loss.
Yeah, that one was big.
That was, yeah, I covered that one. I did a pre-interview with them. They're just a great team that developed that. They seem really passionate. And this was compared to, over the past 5 years, Jeffries put out this report, and there have been between 3 and 9 first half approvals for CBER the past 5 years. So they're a little behind, but they have lots of potential decisions to catch up in the second half.
Yeah, we were just talking about that last week, where we are seeing more and more of these decisions that had been very controversial, rejections, I should say, under McCary and Prasad, coming back around to the FDA. So I guess we have those to look forward to and maybe start to catch up on some of those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, this one isn't CBER, but Sale Therapeutics, which is spelled SAOL but pronounced Sale. They just resubmitted their application for a rare disease drug after coming to alignment with the FDA. So more good news for the space.
Yeah, yet another one to add to the list. We already had Replimune, Regenex, Unicure. There were several and in Capricorn too. That was even before McCary left. These were all companies that had been rejected in the past year, who are all coming back around, reporting positive discussions with the FDA and resubmissions.
Yeah, and Capricorn and Replimune have their decisions coming up this summer in August. Also, AdComs for both.
That's right, and that's a little bit of a change of pace as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so regulatory experts that I've spoken to over the past couple of weeks are really optimistic about the second half of 2026, especially for rare disease drugs. Peter Pitts, he's a former associate commissioner at the FDA and frequent biospace contributor. He is especially optimistic now that Vinay Prasad is gone, and he does not mince words. So you can read. I've got an article coming out that you can read some of his commentary in, but he's not alone in that either.
Well, certainly good to hear that we're not so far behind in terms of some of these FDA decisions. We, kind of felt that way, and the numbers show that, yeah, we are down a little bit in terms of these rare disease approvals. But with these new applications coming back in, these resubmissions, hopefully we're on track to kind of catch up a little bit as we move toward the end of the year.
Definitely.
Any other noteworthy decisions we should be looking out for in Q3?
Well, there's one that could come out later today, and today being Tuesday when we're recording, everyone is watching for Vera Therapeutics IgA nephropathy candidate atacicept. So the target action date is July 7th. So while we don't know the decision as of now, you all probably do by now when you're listening to this.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll have a story on that one for you all soon. And yeah, stay tuned for continued coverage, especially of the rare disease space. Heather's always on top of that and reporting another story as we speak. So definitely one we want to see, especially as we start to restack FDA leadership. Again, still waiting permanent leadership across both CBER and CEDAR and the commissioner position. But as we talked about last week, the report so far from the acting leadership is pretty positive, and so we're hopeful to see these FDA decisions keep rolling in the right direction. All right. Well, now, as promised, we are going to come back to some of the VC funding. This week in Biopharm Executive, Annalie, you have kind of a breakdown of what we saw in the first half so far?
Yeah, so again, Tristan Manilak came over to the biopharm executive world and took a look at venture capital activity in the first half. No surprise, Isomorphic's $2.1 billion raise topped the list of the highest fundraises of the half. It's one of the biggest ever, I believe second biggest ever, which is kind of shocking to say. So we compiled the top 5 and took a look at these companies. Another interesting one on the list was Parabolis. They raised a Series F earlier this year, and then of course they just IPO'd, and they were one of the record breakers for the top IPOs. So everything comes full circle in biopharma. Some other trends we saw: funding to early stage companies has continued to be really slow, which is something that I'm always yelling about in this industry, is that we have to support these early stage companies. Would love to see more interest among VCs for these early stage companies, which are working on really breakthrough science. So you can check out the full analysis of the venture capital activity in biopharma at Biospace.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out all these first half trend stories. It's been a complex year and a half, to say the least, with a lot of macro headwinds facing the industry. But again, especially since bio, we've been talking about this real positive vibe, optimism. And so let's take a look at the numbers and see that that is shining through. We are seeing this uptick in funding, in IPOs, in M&As. But again, as I said earlier in the show, it's really that have not situation. So we do want to see more funding coming in for those earlier stage companies, because that is going to fuel those pipelines going forward. For now, though, that's it for our show today. Don't forget to subscribe to all your favorite podcast channels, and we'll see you back next week.